Hi, everybody. I'm John Halpin. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 11th edition of the Fox Sports Fantasy 15 podcast. My friend Ryan Fowler is with me from Cincinnati, and we've got more fantasy football talk for you because we're drafting already. We're mocking. We are ranking. We're doing all sorts of stuff. One guy I want to talk about who's a very hot name, Ryan, Todd Gurley.
Yeah.
Jeff Fisher says, preseason, we're not going to see Todd Gurley. No snaps, no games, no nothing. Maybe we don't know about week one, but we're not going to have that chance to watch him in the preseason and say, oh, he looks really good, or he looks like he's limping or favoring or somethinging. What do you think of Todd? Does this affect your outlook on Todd Gurley at all?
I think the way that it would have impacted Todd Gurley's draft ranking is if he did play and we saw better. I don't think him not playing will push him down any further. Now, I think we're having two different conversations when we talk about Todd Gurley, and I've answered this in a lot of the fantasy football chats we've hosted on foxsports.com and in a couple Twitter questions, Facebook questions. Redraft leagues, Todd Gurley has one value. In dynasty leagues, I think he has another. And when you look at Todd Gurley and the position that he's in and the system that he's in, it's kind of a changing of the guard. Sam Bradford, the health just never really held true to what we thought we were going to get out of Sam Bradford coming out of college. I mean, he kept getting dinged and dinged. So they bring in Nick Foles. Could this turn into a more pass-friendly offense where we see Brian Quick, Tavon Austin, Kendricks, Jared Cook do a lot more work? And does he become kind of just a part of the balance of that offense? Or is it going to remain a rush-heavy? I mean, it's Fisher. Will it be a rush-heavy type offense? So when you look at it as a redraft league, he's got a value of probably 5th, 6th round, maybe even later. In dynasty leagues, this is where he really does have an impact on not playing in the preseason, because I think these guys that have keeper in dynasty leagues are going to want to see a lot more Todd Gurley before they invest a higher than a 5th round draft pick on a guy that's coming off a major knee surgery. So you have the Nick Foles angle where, hey, that's a change at a major position that could impact the way the offense flows. And then you also have the knee surgery and coming off of that and not seeing him in the preseason. So if I'm a dynasty league owner, I kind of pump the brakes on him a little bit just because you're not going to get a true look at him until the regular season. So I think that would be the main area where I think people would be impacted by not seeing Todd Gurley in the preseason.
Okay, I will tell you what. I was in we talked about, I was in a draft over the weekend, what we call the flex leagues. A lot of people from lots of other websites, CBS and FanDuel and Roto Experts and lots of other ones. And Gurley went 2 drafts, I think, late 3rd, early 4th.
That's
so
early.
You want Todd Gurley, I don't think you're getting him in the 5th round. Right now I'm looking at his ADP 45.
You're overpaying for a guy that you don't know. I think that's another topic we're going to hit on. I mean, I think you're overpaying if you're taking a guy coming off a knee surgery with a new quarterback there. Let's say Sam Bradford was still there. I think Todd Gurley in that position might make a little bit more sense. But now we just have a lot of flex in that offense. And we, again, with the way that they've got to rotate through running backs there, it's not a guarantee that Todd Gurley is going to be the second coming of Adrian Peterson or a top-tier running back.
I agree with you, but the one thing you said stuck out in my head. If I have to bet on, if I'm looking at the impact of Brian Quick and Tavon Austin and even my man Kenny Britt, I think I'm going to bet against them and go with the running back.
And I think that's true, but I think there's also a lot of heads in that backfield that no matter what they say could turning it into a committee just because that's how the Rams work.
If I would think, as good as Gurley appeared to be last year and as good as we think he's going to be, using Trey Mason to lighten the load on him and his knee early might not be a half bad idea. So I'm with you on that. All right, everybody. Some of you are watching on a Google Hangout. Some of you are listening on the Fox Sports Fantasy 15 podcast. If you're listening, please subscribe on both iTunes and SoundCloud. And as far as the watching, we're going to have a YouTube channel all set up for foxsports.com/fantasy pretty soon. We'll let you know exactly where, how you can find it, all that stuff. Also, Twitter questions. We're ready for fantasy football Twitter questions. Ryan is at Fox Sports Fowler. I'm at jhalpin37. Let's get on to more fantasy football. Dorial Green-Beckham. We could argue that Dorial Green-Beckham was the most talented wide receiver in the draft. Came with some issues, to put it mildly. He was 2nd round draft pick for the Titans. On Monday, he worked with the first team offense. Little background, he was injured, missed some of the offseason stuff, had some drops issues, there were murmurs about some conditioning, but things have been going well for Dorial Green-Beckham lately, and he worked with the first team on Monday. Now, we don't want to get too freaked out about one little thing happening in the preseason, But how much second thought does this give you about him? Do you think maybe he's got more value than I thought?
Well, let's start with the backfield and the issues that the Titans have in the backfield, because that kind of leads them to be a little bit more creative in their passing game. Last year, you had Bishop Sankey didn't really take on the role that a lot of people had hoped, and they're kind of going to run a committee out of there. There was a report over the last week of another committee coming to the NFL, and it's going to remain, I guess I would say, because there has been committees in the past with the Titans. So there's a lot of pressure on Marcus to really lead that team through the air, because I don't know if there's a lot of faith in the running backs that they do have on the roster. As far as it concerns Dorial Green-Beckham, I think when you look at Justin Hunter and Kendall Wright last year, the top two guys in that receiving core, along with Delaney Walker, I really think that they didn't separate themselves enough to say, hey, this is our receiving core. We are the top two options, or top three options if you want to put Delaney in there. So Dorial is going to have an option because, again, it is a new face behind center. It's not Jake Locker and the 3 games he played before he would bow out. So I think it's one of those things where Hunter and Wright didn't do enough last year to say, this is our receiving core. Why not give the rookie a chance? Big body, great red zone talent. And I think when the draft happened and we did some analysis on that, that's what it came back to. I mean, this is a big target that Marcus can really do some damage on with when they're inside the red zone. Justin Hunter, I think he's well behind what Kendall Wright did last year. So maybe he's the odd man out if Dorial can really squeeze his way into that starting lineup.
You and I are on the same page on Dorial Green-Beckham. I have him 54 at wide receiver. You have him 55. So we're going to keep him right around there, we think?
Yeah, I'm not going to go out of my way to bubble him up. There's a lot, and that was the other point I wanted to make. There's a lot of talented receivers, and those talented receivers have veteran quarterbacks, which the Titans do not have at the moment.
All right. I want to talk about a guy. I was looking through every time we do one of these things, I look through the rankings again. And I want to find a person, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Sometimes I like to, but I'm not doing it now. I looked for someone whose ranking makes me say, hey, he really likes this guy or he really doesn't. You have Roy Helu at running back 34. I know people who like him. I don't know if I like anybody who likes him that much. I want to talk to you about why you like him. I like him too, just not quite as much. But the second thing is that should I take that as a sign that your faith in Latavius Murray is kind of shaky?
No, and let me preface this with the caveat that we will be updating our top 200 rankings and positional rankings on Wednesday. So tomorrow we'll have a fresh batch of rankings. Now, these aren't going to be overhauled like they were off season 2 when we released 1.0. So there might be some swings here. But when it comes to Roy Helu, I'm a buyer. And again, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before in conversation. My rankings, and again, we don't really break it down that way because the way that our ranking system works under the hood and in the code and in the weeds doesn't really allow for it, but it does lean PPR because so many leagues have one PPR. I mean, standard, I think Helu's value is well below 34. It's in the PPR leagues where I think Helu can do a lot of damage. I trust Latavius Murray, and I know trust and fantasy football are one of those funny buzzwords, but I think Latavius Murray is a 1,000-yard rusher if he stays healthy and plays in 15, 16 games. I had Vic Tafer, the Raiders beat writer, on the Fox Sports Team Report podcast last week, and he buys stock in Murray. So I think there's a consensus that Murray's going to be that lead back. Trent Richardson, I have a feeling it's just not going to work out. Shocker there. But when it comes to Roy Helu, we saw what Marcel Reese had done in previous years. Marcel Reese in the passing game did some work. And I think Helu, coming from Washington and being a free agent acquisition and somebody that gets a fresh start, I still think that guy, if you think the Raiders defense is still struggling and is going to allow a lot of points, they allowed 28 plus points per game last year. There's going to be a lot of rallying in the second half. And sometimes a guy like Roy Helu can really live up to expectations because of that.
All right. I want to talk about, it's August 11th that we're doing this. Mm-hmm. And even though the games haven't started.
You didn't count that Steelers game?
I didn't catch much of it.
I'm kidding.
Because I knew I wasn't going to see anybody that interesting. I should have watched some, but I really should have. But I just kind of glanced at it a little bit. But the hype train on a lot of guys is, going full speed.
Yeah.
Is there a player sticking out in your head? I have a few. Is there a player sticking out in your head where you're watching the hype train and you're saying, I liked this guy 3 weeks ago, but now he's getting too expensive for me?
Well, you have him on your notes, and the reason I'm going to bring him up and not I don't want to steal your thunder on the note, but when Martavis Bryant exploded on the scene last year, again, he got the slow start because of injury, was activated in the middle of the season. I wrote a free agent frenzy, free agent waiver wire, whatever you want to call it, column about being all in on Martavis Bryant because I felt that they needed a red zone target for Roethlisberger that he hadn't had since Plaxico Burress. Bryant's a bigger body than Wheaton, Antonio Brown. The problem is when you looked at the end of the season stats and Bryant did what he did in the red zone, he got a lot of targets in the end zone, not just red zone, in the end zone, dropped a few, this and that. I'm starting to sell a little bit of the stock that I bought so much of last year. Le'Veon Bell's only going to be gone 2 games. Antonio Brown is going to be a beast. And between Brown and Bell, I just think there's so much action and touches going their direction that it's going to be really hard for Martavis Bryant to squeeze into that top 24 wide receiver conversation. I think he's a talented flex option in standard leagues. I think his PPR value is much lower because there's just not going to be enough balls to go around by the time Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell get their food weeks 3 through 17. So I do like Martavis Bryant. I'm not in love with him as much as I was middle of last year.
Yeah, Martavis Bryant, I'm with you. It's funny, and it's not just because if you remember last week, Ben Roethlisberger, someone said, "Hey, who's your biggest bet to have a breakout this year?" And he went, "Oh, Marcus Wheaton." And everybody said, "What? What do you mean?" I was betting on Bryant. But Bryant was really good last year. He 8 touchdowns, 900 and something yards. But right now his ADP is 49. That's top of the 5th round. Man, that's expensive.
That is. I think it's just. I'm surprised it's not higher, to be honest. With the way that the conversation flows on Twitter among pundits and experts, I would think that ADP would be much higher, and it wouldn't surprise me. Now that his cast came off, there was a report that he had that minor procedure on his elbow and he's getting back out there on the field. Now that they see him back practicing and everything, I could see it squeezing into even a higher ADP. But I don't know if I'm going to I have a keeper league. Here's a great scenario. I know you like these on the podcast. So I have to keep 3 keepers in one league. I'm probably going to keep Tony Romo because I have a feeling that, by the time all the keepers are off the board, decent quarterbacks are going to be gone. So Romo, I trust with Des Bryant back there in that offensive line. LaShawn McCoy, it is what it is. And then I have to really kind of get creative because Josh Gordon was my bet at the end of last year. That's gone by the wayside. So Martavis Bryant, Jarvis Landry, Joyke Bell. These are guys, I might just keep 2 and take a supplemental pick because I don't know if I'm going to invest my 3rd keeper in Martavis Bryant.
Does it mean a 3rd round pick? Is that the way it goes?
No, it's just a roster spot. And then there's a supplemental round for any picks that you do not keep or any players you do not keep. So if I only keep 2 out of the 3 keepers I'm allowed, I get a 1st round supplemental pick before the draft starts.
Okay.
So anybody that kept 2 or fewer players on their roster, they get in first, quote unquote, 1st round picks.
Oh, I throw Bryant back then.
Yeah.
That's definitely
what I'm leaning.
Because essentially he would cost you a 3rd round pick or something to that effect.
And I got him off the waiver wire. So it was, it's a moot point. And I think there's going to be some, again, we've talked about it ad nauseum. There's going to be a solid receiver out there in the 1st round. Might not be Odell Beckham or Jordy Nelson or Randle Cobb, but there's going to be a decent wide receiver out there, even in keeper leagues. And
I'm throwing back Romo too, but we can talk about that later. My other 2 guys, Amir Abdullah.
Yeah.
Okay, I watched Amir Abdullah. I watched some video on him before the draft, and I fell in love. I just was like, wow, look at this guy. He's fat, he's explosive, love him. And Joyke Bell has had some injuries in the offseason. Well, now and everybody's starting to say, hey, maybe Amir Abdullah can take that job and run with it, and maybe he can. Much as I like the guy, that's another one here. Round 5 ADP at this point. Joyke Bell's not dead.
Exactly. Yeah, if Joyke Bell had a season-ending knee surgery, okay. But there's way too many red flags for a rookie running back to take the complete control of an 18-touch-a-game rapport and not say that Joyke Bell's – because here's the thing. Let's say Amir Abdullah lives up to the hype and he gets 18 touches a game. Who's to say Joyke Bell's not going to finish those drives? It's one of those things where even if you look at Amir Abdullah and say he's the number 1 back, Joyke Bell still had a role in that offense in previous years where he finished off the drive. So you might get your 18 carries for 65 yards, but Joyke Bell might have 2 touchtdowns. So it's not a full value pick.
And Theo Riddick's there too to catch passes.
Exactly. So Theo Riddick's going to be one of those guys that we really, it's the Swingers quote. The PG-13 Theo Riddick that we really, really hope is going to make it. And then he's just going to be Theo Riddick. He catches and has a few nice games a year. But I hope he does break through.
He's just back Batting the bunny around, isn't he, Ryan?
Batting the bunny around.
All right, man. I've been watching that movie a lot late night lately on
so
HBO
great.
or whatever it is. But yeah. So I really like Abdullah. I just think his price is getting a little high. My last one, Brandon Cooks, another one. You look and you say, I see a very clear path where he could be the Saints' top receiving option. Okay, I happen to think the Saints are going to run the ball a little more this year.
Yes, I get it.
But this guy, I mean, last year he averaged, 10 yards a catch? 11?
Yeah, and a small sample size.
And I know. I mean, he caught 50 passes in 10 games. I mean, he's going to catch a lot of passes.
Sure.
Third round? I mean, hold on. I'm going to check the receivers that are going before or after Brandon Cooks. DeAndre Hopkins is going after Brandon Cooks. Now, I know some people have been talking lately about, hey, DeAndre Hopkins wasn't as good when Foster wasn't in the lineup last year. DeAndre Hopkins had like 1,200 yards receiving. He's a terrific receiver.
I sell DeAndre Hopkins stock, and I think Brandon Cooks going ahead of him does not make sense.
Jordan Matthews, another one. There's a breakout that I buy more than Brandon Cooks because he's bigger, red zone target, all that stuff.
It's not like Brandon Cooks is going to be a red zone target. He's going to be I liken him to Jarvis Landry in Miami. They're saying they want to get Jarvis Landry more red zone targets and maybe even look at him in the end zone more because I think we might have joked about this last year when Jarvis Landry, and speaking of Jarvis Landry, consistent in the PPR format. The problem is, as it looked last year, more times than not, he was Danny Amendola, the joke of you catch 90 balls and you rack up 607 yards. Now, I don't think that's Jarvis Landry to a T, but Brandon Cooks could be a guy that just has a high volume of receptions, but he's not closing the deal because they have Mark Ingram, because they have Josh Hill. Colston's still going to get some looks there.
Yeah, I just think, I like Cooks. And look, I think he's explosive enough that the yards per catch certainly can go up. And he's a super, he's a fast guy and all that. But third round, I'm out.
Do you believe that this just has to do with Drew Brees? Like, people don't think that Drew Brees is getting older. I just don't. Like when I think of Drew Brees, I always think it's the same Drew Brees. I don't think he's getting older, and I don't think, to your point of them going to be rushing more this year, I think there's sometimes a crutch of fantasy owners when they do the research. It's always going to be the same Saints offense that just chucks the ball around. They have evolved a little bit, especially last year when you saw some of those rushing totals game in and game out. Brandon Cooks is going to eat pretty well, but I think you have to be honest with yourself and not get caught up in what the Saints offense used to be when it was flying all around the yard and when they were making postseason runs.
Right. I'm with you on that. All right. Next up, where are you on Joseph Randle? Here's the thing. I see the opportunity. I think if the guy gets 250 carries, he almost can't help but get 1,000 yards rushing. Right. But I'm also not convinced they're not going to sign somebody else. Like people are buying a little high for me. Like I would love to get. I don't know if I'd love to get. I'd like to get the guy. I'm just looking at where people are getting him. And there's another one. I'm going to look up his ADP right now. Hold, please. It's pretty wrong. Randle, 32 is his ADP. Like that guy could be close to a 0. I mean, he might get 1,200 yards rushing. He could also be close to a 0, just depending on how things shake out. And I know his main threat is probably not on the roster at this point. I think they're going to get Dunbar more involved. McFadden's there. McFadden might not even make. They're saying he might not even make the team, or some people are saying just because he's no good anymore. But
Thomas is out there.
I can't imagine that this Super Bowl contender is going to go into the season and say, Joseph Randle, yep, we're in.
I do like your last point there, but I do also want to allow your audience to know that, I mean, your MO this year is receiver heavy. So when you see a guy like Joseph Randle with an ADP of the third round or late second round, you're going to freak out because you are so dedicated to the receivers this year. And that's a fine strategy, but I think that also plays into how you approach Joseph Randle draft stock.
Here's why. Because, and it's not a one-size-fits-all, but I look at that. I'm looking at ADP right now. Mm-hmm. Joseph Randle, 32. Emmanuel Sanders, 33.
Yeah.
If I'm at that point and I have a running back and a receiver, or even 2 receivers, and I'm going, well, I'm going to take Joseph Randle just because I need a running back? No.
Right.
No. I'm going to take the sure thing. And if I want a questionable running back, I'll get the questionable running back later. Now, I know that Randle might be really good. I mean, the line's terrific. I mean, it's a really good offensive team. I get all that. I get it. But the way you could see this not going well.
Right. And the one thing that we talk about a lot with draft strategy is avoiding risk. And if there's any, I swear, as the seasons play out, risk with running backs is just so through the roof that you really want to limit the risk that you put into a draft pick when it comes to a running back, especially in those first 3-4 rounds. So I think if you had to give Joseph Randle a risk ranking, 10 being the most risky, where would you have Randle right now?
I think I don't want to overreact because it's not like there's someone pushing him in camp. Whoever the person is a free agent that nobody wanted, most likely. Okay.
But I still think Pierre Thomas can play in this league, by the way.
I think he can too. I like Pierre Thomas. But, Ray Rice, who knows?
Sure.
But, Joe, I think that's a pretty solid 5 risk, at least, on Randle. It's like I said, it's not like he's getting pushed within camp. I'm imagining a situation rather than looking at a situation that exists. I understand that. But 3rd round, I don't know. I just don't see it. It's too much risk.
Yeah, it stinks because we're agreeing a lot in this podcast today. Normally, we don't do this as much, but I am with you. I think if I was in the 3rd round and I looked at my roster, if I had to guess in most of my leagues, I would have a running back and a wide receiver or 2 running backs heading into that 3rd round. I'm going wide receiver. I'm not looking at Joseph Randle as an RB2 that I trust at this moment because of the reasons you pointed out.
All right, last one. Cardinals rookie David Johnson has a hamstring injury. It sounds like as of Tuesday morning, they're going to bring in CJ2K. Bruce Arians basically came out Monday and said, I hate all my running backs. I want a new one. In not so many words.
No, that's what he said.
He's mad at them, and Johnson's hurt now. I'm looking at this. Chris Johnson, to me, there's nothing left in the tank, or very little. This makes me like Andre Ellington more. I picked him in the 4th round of a draft the other day, and I'm feeling pretty good about that because Arians has said he wants to get 15 to 18 touches for Ellington, or 18 to 20, whatever it is. Last year he said 25, and that didn't work out because he's too small. But this makes me, I'm not interested at all in Chris Johnson. People were saying that David Johnson was going to push Ellington.
Right.
I'm looking at Ellington now, and I'm feeling like he's more solid.
I tweeted out before we started because I saw the report, and I'm like, okay, Bruce Arians, he's no dummy. He's a coach that he has a plan, and he wouldn't be as successful as he has been without the plan. So I'm looking at Andre Ellington 2013, and we got all excited. We got this little taste of Andre Ellington where he had, 9 yards per touch, 11 yards per touch when you combine his receiving and rushing yards. We got all excited for 2014, and he came in limping, a little hampered, and then they shut it down. So we didn't get to see, kind of like with Latavius Murray last year too, we didn't get to see this full body. So when Arians says he wants to get 15 to 18 with Ellington, and then they're also talking about bringing in Chris Johnson, I look at Ellington and I'm like, didn't we want Andre Ellington to be Chris Johnson? Like, we wanted this ability to be kind of a hybrid running back that could really push the limits of, let's just say, 1,500 yards. I don't think Ellington has 1,500 yards in him. But CJ2K, outside of the 2,000-yard season, he didn't really put up huge numbers before and around that. So Ellington, I don't know if I'm as dedicated as you are because of this. I'm just wondering if Arians is playing the reverse psych game and kind of bringing in Chris Johnson to say, hey, get this guy going and we'll have something for you. Or if Arians is just bringing in Chris Johnson to motivate Andre Ellington to take that next step, and he has no intention of keeping Chris Johnson for the regular season.
All right. Andre Ellington, ADP of 44, yes or no?
Was that end of the 3rd?
And the late 3rd, second half of the 3rd.
Oh, absolutely.
No, second half of the 4th, sorry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So I buy. Yep.
He was in the draft over the weekend. It was a standard league, and I led off with 3 receivers. Ellington was my first running back in the 4th round.
Yep.
So hopefully that works out, but we'll talk about that another day too. Ryan, what else should people be looking for right now other than signing up, joining a league, or creating a league at foxsports.com/fantasy?
Yeah, lots going on this week. I think now that we're kind of in August, the Hall of Fame game's behind us, and now we're getting into more preseason action, it's going to become peppered with more content because we have more to chew on now that we get a little bit more reports out of Bruce Arians and some games to actually watch, albeit in limited amount of work for the guys that we really do pay attention to. But Adam Meyer's hosting a chat tonight, 8 p.m. on Tuesday. Was August 11th? You mentioned at the top of the podcast. I don't even know what date it is. I got a new puppy, John, so my clock is completely thrown off.
Tell everyone the puppy's name.
It's Deli, after Matthew Dellavedova of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
There you go.
He's an ankle biter too. They both go after ankles, so we gotta pay attention there. So Adam Meyer chat Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mock with Fox tomorrow at 5:30. Also, Adam Meyer, he's got a busy week ahead. You have the Twitter Periscope coming up. So, and then as I mentioned too, the rankings overhaul tomorrow by end of business, 5 o'clock. We'll get those updated, published, and a new look, because I do think we made fun of my LaShawn McCoy overall number 1 pick. I'm a realist. Le'Veon Bell is going to be my number 1 pick tomorrow once it's all said and done. I think the 2-game suspension is just looking at that Steelers offense. A lot of good things for them ahead in fantasy circles.
All right, and as Ryan mentioned, we're doing the ranking updates, and I'm doing a Periscope Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Follow at NFL on Fox on Twitter, and you can ask me questions, lots of them, as I rapid fire answer questions into my iPhone in my house, answering all of them. I get a lot of them done, right? I go fast. I don't take breaths, like you said.
No, I mean, when you get into that room and there's 200 people basically firing different questions at you, rapid fire, and it's my favorite is because it's Twitter, it's just like a word. And then you have to take that word and extrapolate a question out of it. It's like Cowboys. Yes, they are a football team. I don't know. Sometimes it's not the easiest translation of what's coming in to break it down. One other thing I forgot to mention, I know it's a little out of bounds, but she is a huge part of Fox Sports and Fox Sports 1. Did a podcast, Fox Sports Team Report with Katie Nolan yesterday. Got her thoughts on fantasy football. Deflategate, she's a big Patriots fan. So again, Katie Nolan, Fox Sports Team Report, got a unique take on some different NFL headlines. Check it out.
Awesome. It sounds great. I'll be listening to that later. Everybody, again, please subscribe to the Fantasy 15 podcast on both iTunes and SoundCloud, and watch these Google Hangouts. We really like doing them for you. So please keep checking them out. Also, again, create a league, join a league, do a mock, check the rankings, everything. Lots of draft advice, foxsports.com/fantasy/football. We're going to be back with another podcast and Hangout on Friday. So please come on back then. For Ryan Fowler, I'm John Halpin. Thank you for watching and for listening to the Fox Fantasy 15.